So tonight, we're going to talk about one word. That's the title of my message. So every year, I kind of go through this process where I ask God, what is the direction that he wants me to go? What is the direction he wants for my life to go? And I kind of want to take you guys along in that process. So during this time, I'm going to talk about two stories. I'm going to tell you one story in the Bible, and then I'm going to read you another one. So the first story I'm going to talk to you guys about tonight is about a guy named Elijah. Everybody say Elijah. So Elijah's this prophet dude, and he was a pretty bad guy. I'm not going to say that thing, but he was pretty much a bad A, okay? And what he did is he fought against like the prophets of Baal, which these guys were like pretty gnarly guys. And what they would do is they were just calling up to their God, and basically he challenges them. And he's got an altar, and they got their altar, and they're praying to their God, and they said, if my altar is light on fire, then God is real, and if your altar is lit on fire, then your God is real. And so, of course, our God is real, so Elijah's like, boom! You know, guys like, God, just do it, you know, and so God does it, right? And it's just cool stuff happens, but then something bad happens, because now the queen and the king of the land is like saying, I'm going to kill you, Elijah, because you just said our God wasn't real. And so Elijah goes into this deep depression, and he's like searching for God, and he's wandering in the desert, right? And he goes and he's trying to seek God, and God he's just silent. And so he finally goes up to this mountain called Mount Horeb, which is actually the same mountain that Moses received the 10 Commandments on, right? And so he goes up to this mountain, he goes into a cave, and he waits there for God, and then there's an earthquake. And the Bible says that the earthquake is just huge. I mean, just like 9.7 on the Richter scale, and it's just crazy. It's just booming. It's just booming, you know, it's crazy. But God's not in the earthquake. And then there's wind, and there's just crazy, just wind, torrential wind, and God is not in the wind. And Elijah's just, his theology is what he thought about God is just blowing up. Like, how many of you guys have ever thought something about God and it wasn't true? It was really hard for you to register that. Maybe you always thought you had to be perfect, and then God radically showed you grace, and then you're like, crap. Like, how do I respond to this, you know? But so Elijah's in one of these moments, and finally there's a calmness. There's a stillness. It says the Bible is still. Still. And then he hears the voice of God. He hears God is in this moment. God is in the stillness. So I had you guys be still for a minute. Some of you guys have ADD, and it was like impossible, like 10 seconds of silence and doing nothing. How do I do that? Some of you guys, that's why you don't read your Bible, because it requires you to be still for about 5 minutes. Let me tell you, it's really hard for me to keep focused for 5 minutes and not be completely crazy, or, you know, not be thinking about 5 different things. But so that's what I did this year, is I've been spending time with God, preparing for this year, and I've been spending time in that stillness. That was the point of that story, by the way. To show you that God is in the stillness. He's in that time where you just take everything else, all your friends out, social media out. I almost fasted social media, by the way, because that social media, that will steal your quiet time with God more than anything else. It'll steal your joy. I'm just telling you, because you're comparing yourself to everybody else. And you see their highlights, and you're comparing their highlights to your behind the scenes, right? And that's not good. That's not good. So I spent some time with God, and I almost fasted social media, but I decided not to, because it's part of my job to post on social media and stuff like that. So I figured I just won't post personally as much. But I'm actually fasting Starbucks. So that's something, espresso shots. So yeah, I had a problem, and I admitted, I confessed. I walked through the 5 doors of recovery, and I am on the other side. No, I'm not there yet. I'm actually in the withdrawal phase, and that's why I'm acting really crazy. So yeah, no espresso shots. Which is killing me, okay? And but I was just kind of, over the last couple of days, spending time in stillness, and God just kind of revealed a word to me.
because I said, God, what's one word? That, like, in the past, my one word last year, I think, was surrender. The year before that, it was like, I don't even remember. But this year, the word that God is kind of putting in my heart is dream. Like, dream. And what that means to me is I believe that God has He will put a dream in each one of us. A dream that only only way we can accomplish that dream is if He does it through us. That we can't do it on our own. We can't do it on our own power. And the dream is not self-seeking, but it's always giving life to others. So if God puts a dream in us, it's not to try to get people to look at me, right? But the dream, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. I got like 5 verses, 3 points, and a conclusion, and we're done, all right? That's all that's going to happen. But we're going to talk about how God has a dream for you. He puts a dream in you, but that dream is not going to come to pass on its own. Just because God has a dream for your life, He has a purpose for your life, doesn't mean you're going to fulfill that purpose. There's a gap in there. There's a gap between your dream that God has for you and where you're at right now. And to get there, you got to have faith. To get to the place, the dream that God has put inside of you, you've got to have faith to get there. So we're going to look at a story in Genesis 37, verse 5, if you guys want to pull that up on your phones or any smart device, that'll be fine. But I brought a cool-looking Bible to show you. If you guys didn't know, I'm a really big nerd, and I love Hebrew, and I love Jewish stuff. This is the Jewish Study Bible, before we get into it. And kind of an interesting note is it's actually translated from the original Hebrew, so it's just the Old Testament, by the way. So no New Testament in this. And we're going to look at Genesis 37. And basically, I got this while I was in Portland. Was it 2 weeks ago, Brooklyn? 2 weeks ago, we went and saw Anthony and Sarah getting married. They are a married couple. Give them a round of applause. Yeah, this is going to be on camera, so yeah, come on, give them more. Yeah, there you go. All right, yeah. All right, we're so excited for them. I heard they got sick on their honeymoon, which really sucks, but I'm sure it was still good. But we're so excited for them to be back and to rock it this semester. And so, yeah, Genesis 37, chapter 5. And I'm actually going to read from the original Hebrew text. You ready? Haaretz. I'm just playing. that was a joke. Verse 5. Once Joseph had a dream. Everybody say dream. Which he told to his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, hear this dream. Dream. There we go. There. Every time I say dream, just say it. Dream. Which I have dreamed. There we were binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf stood up and remained upright, when your sheaves gathered around and bowed low to my sheaf. His brothers answered, do you mean reign over us? Do you mean to rule over us? And they hated him even more for his talk about his dream. He dreamed another and told it to his brothers. By the way, the Hebrew word for dream is halam. Everybody say halam. Yeah, you're getting some good stuff here. You're getting some educational. You haven't even gone back to school yet, and you're getting educated. Sorry, that was bad. Okay, so he had another dream. And this time, the sun, the moon, 11 stars were bowed down to me. And he told it to his father and his brothers. His father berated him. What, he said to him, is this dream you have dreamed? Are we to come, I and your mother and your brothers, and bow low to you on the ground? So his brothers were wrought up at him, and his father kept the matter in mind. So basically, Joseph's being pretty cocky, all right? He's basically got this dream. There you go. He basically has this thing, and and now he's saying, it's like, Zach, come up here. Zach, come up here.
So actually, another fun fact is Zach is my brother. And we actually have a Hebrew word tattooed on our arm, right? This, Zach, show him the Hebrew. All right, this Hebrew word says ach. It's like if you're really, it's like if you're really frustrated, you go ach, like that. But so me and Zach are brothers. It's kind of like if Zach had a dream, and in his dream, I'm bowing down to him, and now then he comes up to me and he's like, "You're gonna bow to me," and he starts bragging about it. Now I probably, being the great older brother I am, I probably wouldn't take that very well, especially in my younger days. I would have probably done some stuff about that. Probably hit him and Ben. It's a long story. Everybody give a round of applause for Zach. All right, and then he has a second dream, and in this dream, he tells his dad, all right, stop it, all right. He tells his dad that you're gonna bow down to me too. And his dad, it's pretty interesting. I looked up how many times the word dream occurs in the Bible. It occurs 59 times in the Bible. 59 times the word occurs in the Bible. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a definition. The dream that he's talking about here is kind of a different kind of dream that I'm talking about. It says the kind of dream he's talking about is a series of thoughts, images, or emotions occurring during sleep, right? So everybody has dreams. Everybody has these things that play out in our head while we're sleeping. But the kind of dream I'm talking to you guys about today is a strongly desired goal or a purpose. So don't read too much into it can be pretty similar, because in the Bible, when somebody has a dream and God gives them a dream, that dream will come to pass eventually. It's a goal. It's something that God has put inside of them, right? And so that's what we say when a God dream is something that God has put inside of you so that you can accomplish that. And the only way that you will not accomplish that dream is to not have the faith to carry it out all the whole way. So that's what we're going to talk about. And the other question I want to ask you guys is, how do you know that your dream is a God dream or your dream? How do you know if the dream that you have is your dream or it's God's dream for you? And this is a good question. This is a question that I've wrestled with time and time again. And, and I think you probably wrestle with this too, especially you seniors that are going into college, and you guys who are in middle school going into high school, trying to figure out who you are and your identity and what God has really called you to do. And so what I want to tell you is this. It's kind of a simple quote that I found. It's actually in one of my Bible dictionaries. It says this: "Only those dreams and visions which lead the people into a more faithful relationship with God are regarded as genuine dreams or revelations." So the dream that God has put inside you, in basic terms, is this. Is that if it's a God dream, it will bring people closer to God around you. You're like, okay, for instance, Serena has told me that she has a God dream, which is to reach 1,000 people. God has showed her that she's going to reach 1,000 people in her school. She doesn't know how it's going to happen. Now, she doesn't know how it's going to happen. She doesn't know when it's going to happen. This is just something that God has put in her heart, right? This is a God dream, because here's the thing, and then some of you I want to make $1 million. Or, I want to be the richest business person in the world. I want to do this. I want to date the hottest guy in school or the hottest girl in school, or whatever goal you may think. That's not a God dream. Because God's dream for your life is for you to bring people that He loves so much closer to Him. And when you have that in mind, like I had a similar dream a couple years back, and God kind of said this to me. He said, if you can do it with one, you can do it with 1,000, right? If you can talk to one person about God, then you can talk to thousands of people about God. If God can use you just one time, He can use you thousands. That's what God kind of has put in my heart. And I saw thousands of people that in heaven someday that will be there
because I had faith that God's dream was true, right? And so what does that look like in your life? Maybe you don't know what that dream looks like. Maybe you don't know, maybe you've never had that revelation where you felt like God was pressing it on your heart, and that's okay. That's okay. But what I want us to start doing is going back to that first story where Elijah had to go through the stillness. He had to go through the quiet times. He had to go through the silence. He had to go through listen to God before he knew what to do, right? And I feel like it's the same way for your life. Before you'll know exactly what you're supposed to do and the God dream that God has put inside of you, you've got to be silent before the Lord and kneel before him and say, God, here I am, send me. Here I am, send me. I want whatever you have for me, whether it's something big, whether it's something small, I just want to serve. And when you start doing that, when you start saying, God, whatever you want me to do, I'll do it, then he'll give you this ginormous dream that will surpass all of your all the things that you ever thought you could do. But before you can receive the dream, you have to first submit before the throne, right? Like before you can receive the dream, you have to submit before the throne. Like that should have been a point, but it's not. All right. And here's something I want to talk about. Is in this story, in verse 11, it says this, and his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. The second point is this: a God-sized dream confirms that God has accepted you and has a plan for you. But God accepts you no matter what. But what I'm saying is this, is that when you have this dream inside of you, this urge inside of you, whenever you just want to go after something with everything you've got, what that means is, to me in this story, is that his father didn't look at him and say, Joseph's father didn't look at him and say, you're just cocky. You just think that everybody's gonna, bow down to you. His father didn't say that. He says he kept it in mind. He kept it in mind. He knew that it was from God, but Joseph was just a little immature. Some people who are really gifted by God are just really immature. And the reason but God, this still means that God doesn't mean that God doesn't accept you. You may be immature, but God still accepts you. And what I want to say is this, is that, guys, we serve a heavenly Father who loves and accepts us, who will not judge us. He won't look and cast judgment upon you if you come to him with open hands and a repentant heart. That's the good news, right? Is that Joseph's dad, which I think is kind of a representation of God in my head, did not look at him and say, you're crazy. But he just kept it in mind. He took the good and he threw out the bad. And that's what God does with our lives when we come to him. And if you look at Joseph's life after this, what happened to Joseph? Like, he got sold into slavery by his brothers. He went to Egypt. He worked his way up, and then he got thrown in jail. And then he gets out of jail. He makes it to the top of the Egyptian economic status. He was like right below the Pharaoh. He was right below the Pharaoh. He had everything he needed. And then the dream comes to pass. But his brothers come, and there's a big drought, and he gives them grain, and you can read it in Genesis 37 and 38. But what I want to say is this, and this is the last point. A dream without faith and action is wishful thinking. A dream without faith and action is wishful thinking. So just because you have a dream doesn't mean it's going to come easy. Just because you have something that God has put in your heart to accomplish, whether that be being a missionary, going and reaching your schools, becoming a pastor, doing any type of thing that God has put inside of you, or being a great father someday, being a great mother someday, being a doctor, being a lawyer, being it could be anything, owning your own business. That dream that God has put inside of you will be tested. Do you think that Joseph, when he was in prison, didn't think, well, I think God's favor has left me. I think his promise is void. That dream that I had back when I was a kid, it doesn't really seem like it's going to happen anymore because I'm in the pit. Have you guys ever felt that way? But he didn't give up. And neither should you, neither should I. We have to believe without seeing. That's what faith is. It's believing what is not yet seen. That's what faith is. Faith is believing something before it happens. It's trusting that God knows what he's doing with not even no evidence. It's trusting God. It's trusting that God's going to come through. And I don't know who I'm speaking to today, but somebody in here has been promised something or felt like God has spoken something to you, and right now you feel like it's not going to happen. You feel like it's not going to happen. But trust me, have faith, hold on just a little bit longer. Because Joseph, when he was in his deepest, darkest moment, he got pulled out of that prison. And he got elevated to the top of society. And it was all because he trusted in God. He had faith that God was going to come through no matter what. And even at the last moment, hold on. Because I'm just telling you, this year is not going to be any different than the last years. This year is not going to be any different if we don't have faith that it's going to be. And we don't have the guts to take action for what God has promised, for what God has put in our hearts, that dream that God has put in our hearts. So that's basically what I got. And then the last thing is I'm not going to say that. What are your dreams? What dreams are you? What's motivating you this year? What's been motivating you? Is it popularity? What is it? It could be anything. Is it a God dream that's motivating you? How much effort are you putting into that? What are your goals for changing the world? I feel like God is putting something in my heart. He's saying I'm thinking too small. Like, I think a lot of times we think too small. You know? I think we think too small. Like, if we could do it ourselves, do we really need God? Like, you see what I'm saying? If we could really do it ourselves, do we really need God? If I could go through the motions, if I could go to school, if I could make straight C's, if I could make, whatever. You don't need God for that. If you just want to go through the motions, yeah. But what is God putting in your heart? And here's a recap. To hear from God, we got to be still. We got to be still long enough to listen. We have to know the difference between a God dream and our dreams. And we have to know that there's a gap in between your dreams and where you're at right now. And that gap is called faith. Faith. You got to have faith to get to your dream. It's not going to happen unless you hold on and you keep being faithful to God. Let's pray.